Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. This is my 200th review on my channel, and I really want to thank my 3 fans for all your loyal support over this time. And for number 200, I wanted to pick a really awesome film. This is Sergeant York, starring Gary Cooper. It has Joan Leslie and Walter Brennan. It's just such a great film, and I wanted to take a look at this for review number 200.
How am I gonna do it?
Well, the film opens up at a church in rural Tennessee in 1917. It's definitely old school, where they have the men and women separated to each side, and they're singing "When the Roll is Called Up Yonder." And Pastor Pyle is played by Walter Brennan, with some crazy eyebrows. He's preaching when old Zeke, actor Clem Bevans, arrives a little late with his squeaky shoes. Silly old Zeke. Well, Pastor continues with his message, but meanwhile outside, some hooligans are yelling and shooting their guns as they ride around on horses, and the poor pastor is continually interrupted. They stop the service, and it looks like one of the riders was Alvin York, as he has shot his initials into a tree. Well, pastor runs the local general store in town, where all the fellers just hang out together, as a salesman pitches his wares to the pastor. Now, reading the newspaper, word gets out about war that's going on, and there's those ominous notes of music from Max Steiner. And these people in the country just want to stay away from the war. It's kind of in another world. It's not part of their world just yet. Mother York arrives for supplies and talks to the pastor about her son, Alvin. Ma is played here by Margaret Wycherley of the film White Heat with James Cagney. And the music, again, is very notable in this film. This Max Steiner music is very sad as she meekly defends her son, and the pastor agrees to go and talk to him. Alvin, meanwhile, he's hanging out at a saloon at the Tennessee-Kentucky border. It's kind of a loophole so that people from Tennessee can go up to a mountaintop and have their drinks just by stepping across the state line into Kentucky during that Prohibition time frame. Well, his mother sends his brother George, actor Dickie Moore, to go and get him. And Alvin is at the bar, content to just drink, when his brother tells him that his ma wants him. And this leads to laughter from one of the guys, and of course there's a big, obligatory bar fight. His brother brings him home, and Ma is there with a pail of water to throw in his face. Well, they have a nice breakfast afterward, before getting to the field work, and you can see that his mother is still very sympathetic and still believes in him, even though he's going through kind of a dark time. Well, Reverend comes by and speaks with Alvin as he's out plowing the field, tries to convince him to get his life right, to get some religion and get right with God, but Alvin just goes about with his business. Now, while out hunting, he stops and talks with the lovely Gracie Williams, played by Joan Leslie. She's been in a few of the films I've reviewed on this channel, like High Sierra in 1941. Now, just a note, this film is legendary. I love it, but I do have to just point out that Gary Cooper here, as Alvin, he does look to be about early 40s here. Not just the young whippersnapper like the real story would have been, So just suspend disbelief just a little bit for that bit. Minor issue. Well, a little later, he's consulting with Ma about setting up in life, aka getting married. And she answers, but, because come on, we know Alvin needs to get his life together first. Well, Alvin goes to visit with Gracie again, but Zeb Andrews is there, played by actor Robert Porterfield, and he's basically asking if she would like to go to the Saturday night shindig. Well, when Gracie goes to get them both a drink, this leads to an off-screen fist fight. And when she returns, there's this funny segment basically showing old Zeb must have lost the fight as he's far off, heading home. Well, Alvin says to Gracie that he wants to marry her, but she thinks he's bad news, what with his fighting and drinking and all that stuff. Well, Alvin dedicates himself to farming and acquiring some good bottom land, the good stuff for growing crops. Sells some animals and pelts and takes on physically demanding jobs for other people, like, removing big rocks, and things like that, splitting rails, pulling stumps, etc. Gracie shows up, gives him a kiss, and runs off at one point. So, she cares for him, but, he's still got to get his life together. Well, Mr. Tompkins is this guy selling the land, but Alvin needs a little more time. He asks for an extra 4 days. There's a beef and turkey target shoot that's coming up. And if he can win those shoots and sell the meat, he'll have enough money to buy the land. Well, Tompkins agrees to this extension. Swell fellow. Or is he? Well, there's the big shooting contest, and Alvin pretty much wins it because he's this expert sharpshooter, and he earns the money that he needed for the land. And he goes to meet with Mr. Tompkins to tell him he won, but that dirty varmint, he tells Alvin that he decided to sell the bottomland to Zeb. Oh, well, Alvin leaves frustrated, and he's back to the saloon and he's drinking again. But after he gets angry, and after all of this drinking, he goes off to confront Tompkins in the pouring rain as the lightning is flashing around him. And there's this big bolt of lightning knocks him from the horse, his gun is destroyed, and as he realizes he's still alive, that's the moment of transformation for this character. He walks in the rain, symbolically to the church where they're singing in the sweet by and by, and walking down the aisle, encouraged by the congregants, this is what the film presents as his come to Jesus moment. And it's really a neat scene, and this is where his character changes in the film. Well, Alvin goes to see Mr. Tompkins a little later, but this time he's a man of peace, asking only that he can buy back his mule, and Mr. Tompkins is kind of taken aback by it, but appreciative of his changed ways, offers to sell it back for a lower price. He makes peace with the Zeb guy too and offers to work his land for him. He tries to work things out with Gracie as well, but that doesn't go so well just yet. Anyhow, Alvin is teaching Sunday school when word gets out that President Wilson has declared a draft. But Alvin is convicted not to kill. It goes against his convictions, and he talks to the pastor about getting an exemption to get out of the draft. He even meets with the draft board, but his appeal is denied. And eventually it leads to a tearful farewell, and off he goes. What are they fighting for? Asks a young Rosie York, played by June Lockhart of Lost in Space fame. And Ma says only, I don't rightly know. Well, we cut to a much different part of the film now. We're in Camp Gordon, Georgia, where a bunch of recruits are working on digging a ditch. There's this guy there from New York, Pusher Ross, who's played by George Tobias of Bewitched fame. He's one of the recruits. He's working away next to Alvin. It was also interesting to see actor Joe Sawyer as Sergeant Early. He was a guy who initially in the film gives Alvin a very hard time about his objection to the conscription. But soon off they go to the shooting range, and Alvin shows the sergeant that he is something of a sharpshooter. He nails every shot perfectly, so they see he's got some potential. Later he's called to meet with the major, this character Major Buxton, who's played by Stanley Ridges. I've seen in a bunch of other films like Hopalong Cassidy. He was also in Black Friday with Karloff and Lugosi. And the major asks him about his request to be a conscientious objector. And after a brief talk about theology, the major shares with him a book of U.S. history, explaining that all through history, it's all about the struggle for freedom. And he gives Alvin a lot to think about, and even offers him, sympathetically, a 10-day furlough to go back home, think about it, and work it out, read the book. And sure enough, Alvin York heads back home. He enjoys the scenic views of Tennessee mountaintops with Max Steiner's incredible music, and he reads his history book. And sitting on that mountaintop, he has that big debate of serving his country or serving God. Well, he returns and tells the major he's ready to fight, and soon Alvin is promoted to the rank of corporal. Before you know it, the troops are off in France, and there's Alvin in the trenches, just one being barraged with artillery. Now, this is the Meuse-Argonne offensive going on. It's October 8th, 1918. And orders have been given that they all need to leave the trenches and they're going to rush in and attack the Germans with the expectation of heavy fire and casualties. And at 6:10, they start the advance, but the Germans retaliate as they charge. And the film just really kicks into this high-gear war film here. And even though the actual war footage of this film isn't very long, it looks incredible. The explosions, the dust, soldiers falling as they heroically make their charge. It's a great sequence in the film. So Alvin York makes it to the German bunker, takes out the soldiers, and there's this funny bit as one of the Germans is just bobbing his head up and down, just like this turkey did earlier in the film. It's kind of goofy because Alvin York makes this gobble gobble noise to get their attention and then starts shooting them just like with the same marksman skills that he used before, using both his rifle and also a Colt 45. He continues to take down the Germans, as he says, like a flock of turkeys, and eventually he's able to take out enough of these Germans that he's able to take prisoners and marches them back to the camp. And it's basically this small band of American soldiers leading about 100 German prisoners. And eventually, after marching them for a while, they arrive at an American camp that can actually take the prisoners from them. Word of Alvin York's accomplishments start to get passed around, some accurate, some a little heavily exaggerated, like he took out the Kaiser, but his reputation begins to spread. And then soon, the film just cuts to award ceremonies and parades for the hero, Sergeant York. He's awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Medal of Honor, and some French and Italian awards I won't even bother trying to pronounce. And there are award ceremonies, and Alvin York gets put into a swanky hotel where he's given numerous film offers that could potentially bring him great amounts of money. And at this point, I'm not going to give away many more spoilers, but you can probably figure out what he really wants. Is he about the money, or is it about the humility and heading back home? Such a great film. Now, something to be noted here is that so far the film has been very faithful to the real-life story of Alvin York. Now, this wasn't just a Hollywood fiction, and in fact, I picked up a copy of Sergeant York, An American Hero by historian David D. Lee from my local public library. And from what I read, this film was very faithful in the details that it depicted of the life of Alvin York, including his wild early days, his ability as a sharpshooter, his conversion to the faith, and his struggle with the themes of pacifism with patriotic loyalty. Now, one thing I have to make mention of in this film is it was directed by Howard Hawks, and I've seen a number of his films already, and I just love the varied subject matters that he works through. I mean, he did His Girl Friday, which is just a silly romantic comedy. He did Thing from Another World, which is like weird, eerie sci-fi. And here we have this blend of like a humble man in the country going off to fight in the First World War. And it is great. I have such an admiration for Howard Hawks. I love the subject matter he picks, and I can't wait to watch more of his films as I continue to go. I'm looking through his list now on the Internet Movie Database, and I'm like, wow, he has done some epic films, a lot I have not even seen yet. So look forward, 3 fans, to more film reviews of him in the future. So just some closing thoughts about this film. I mean, Sergeant York is such an amazing film, and Gary Cooper just nails this role as Alvin York. He is this humble, just plain-spoken character, and I've got to admit, this to me is Gary Cooper in this role is like Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca. This is the one role I identify with him the most. He is just perfect here. And as his character struggles with that conflict of the Christian pacifism with patriotic obligations, we the viewer are just fascinated to see how his character changes through the course of this film and yet stays pretty much the same throughout the film. And Walter Brennan is great as well as the compassionate pastor who talks to him and supports and encourages him. What's really kind of interesting is I think Walter Brennan wasn't really all that old at this point in the film. I think it's maybe in his early 40s. So they deck him up with like the white hair and everything to make him look older. But he is just great here. Joan Leslie is fantastic as usual as this beautiful and supportive character. And I've seen her before in a bunch of other roles, and it's neat to see her again here. And of course, Margaret Wycherley as Ma York is just incredible here as a supportive mother. And it's so funny to see sort of that balance of her as this loving mother in this film, but I remember her so well from White Heat with James Cagney as the evil Ma, who is basically this maniacal character. This is from James Cagney and the Top of the World Ma, kaboom! Well, no, this is a totally different character. She's just wonderful here. And there's a lot of big names that kind of show up through the film. I think also noteworthy was seeing David Bruce, who I remember seeing in the Mad Ghoul with George Zucco. It's kind of funny to see him briefly in the film as one of the privates. And we also get to see Elijah Cook Jr. very briefly in the film, playing away on the piano. And one other thing that I thought was really noteworthy on this copy of Sergeant York, I got this from the public library, of course, is a commentary by Janine Basinger. And she is a film historian who talks about some of the history behind the characters. And I thought there was a little more insight for the film that really helped me appreciate it a little bit better. So that's Sergeant York. That's review number 200. And I just want to thank all my 3 fans for, all the feedback and the comments, good and bad. I take it all. I don't care. The film reviews that I do, this isn't monetized. I just do this for fun. I don't have any corporate sponsors, and I'm not even monetized on YouTube yet. I just do this as a hobby whenever I can find little bits of spare time to cobble these reviews together. But I'm having fun with it. If you have any feedback, good or bad, whatever, I'll take it. I hope to keep exploring some of the old films of the past. There's still a whole bunch of Universal classic monster films to get through. I have a bunch of Tarzan films I want to watch. There's always so many films. I'm building a list from suggestions that I get from fans and subscribers, and that list just keeps growing. So even at 200 film reviews, I still feel like there's so many more I still want to watch. So thank you for being a part of the channel. If you haven't already, please hit that little notification bell and the subscribe and all those crazy things you're supposed to do on YouTube. And thanks for joining me on this journey, and I hope you'll continue to watch these old classics of cinema with me. Thanks.